All right, Vince. Well, I basically kind of set this up as extended rapid fire type show, even though I didn't necessarily call it all rapid fire. But here we are, rapid fire style. Vince from the airport in New Orleans. We don't even have time, for like back drama. We'll get all the fun stuff, the fun stories, hopefully on Monday. I'm going to jump right into topics with you though, because they're probably going to
Okay.
call you to board, and I don't, like
Eh,
stats. I'm wasting more time right now than it's even worth. So,
who knows?
do you buy or sell January 2nd, 2025 as the day BK PTSD officially died?
I tell you what, I think, of course, there's an announcement going on right when you ask me the question, but I think you have to say yes to this. I think I'm going to buy it. There's a couple of reasons. First of all, I, you know, we're in Louisiana, which is
I
it is
didn't
kind
even
of
think about
poetic.
that. You're like right up the road or right
Yeah,
down the road.
yeah, it is poetic that they get this win, the impossible win. By the way, the impossible. We are told it was impossible. They get
Uh-huh.
the
Uh-huh.
impossible win in Louisiana, right down the road from where he currently resides, and definitely ran into my fair share of LSU fans down here as well. And I bit my tongue for the most part, but I had a tour guide who was an LSU graduate, and he's like, he starts talking about football, and I'm like, no, and then he goes,
Where's
oh
this
no,
going?
he's like, oh no, we're gonna be good, next year we'll get our quarterback back, and I look him square in the eye and I go, you still got Brian Kelly, and he starts laughing, and he's like, I knew you were gonna say that. I was like, I couldn't help it, I couldn't. And there was some Georgia fans right next
Love
to me.
it.
They started laughing, and it was fantastic. But to the question, yes, I think they actually have exercised that beast. Finally, you and I had this conversation about is the monkey off the back of Notre Dame, the bowl
Right.
win, and all that.
There's no
Obviously,
doubting it now. There's no
none,
doubting it. It's gone.
zero,
Like
gone.
I made the argument less than a week ago that
Right.
after beating Indiana, it should be gone. I mean, you made good points, even though I mean this is the postseason.
Hey, I
I
get
mean,
it.
because like I didn't even think about this at the time, but watching some of these other lower tiered bowls, and you think about like the playoff teams are really the only teams that are at full strength right now.
That's
So
true.
like
That's why
even
none of these other
Indiana last
bowls,
week.
these
Yeah,
other bowls, like it's like,
that's
oh well,
right.
Michigan beat Alabama and all this. Yeah, okay,
Right.
got it. But like, it's not the same teams.
Yeah,
It's not.
exactly. But the playoff teams it is. So even,
Yeah.
Notre Dame, Indiana, both teams were at full strength. There was no excuse on either side. But now, I mean,
Yeah.
it was in a bowl game, it was on a neutral site, it
Oh
was
yeah.
like a top 5 team, it was Georgia, all these demons gone, all these
Yes.
no-shows. And and I know Brian Driscoll, said this a little bit on his show, and I've said it before. You do still have to give Brian Kelly credit, whatever you think about
100%.
him now, for rebuilding the program and giving it consistency. But it still took the handoff essentially to Marcus Freeman and Kelly fleeing into the night to head down there to Baton Rouge. It still took that for this program to go to the next level. It had to be Marcus Freeman who was going to take this program to the next level. So those demons are exercised. And I didn't even think about the fact that if BK was going to turn on the 10 o'clock news last night and get the lead story, Notre Dame beats Georgia, and he's flinging the remote at the like from his
Hundred
bedroom and
percent. I mean, it's fantastic that we're right down here in the boot, and he's just right up the road, man. Like it is. It's kind of it's poetic justice, man. I'm
I think
telling you,
so. I think
it.
so.
They could have done it in a better spot.
Beautiful. It is
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, fill in the blank. You were, of course, in New Orleans in the Superdome last night. The thing that stood out most to you from Notre Dame's win over Georgia was blank.
Well, look, they were the underdog. I don't care what Vegas says or anything like that. I mean, it was a 2-to-1 ratio, Georgia to Notre Dame fans, and that might be generous as
That
far
was
as like,
obvious on TV,
was
like
it okay? I was going to
like
ask
I
that.
thought it was anyway.
Yeah.
Like the way the cheers were and the boos and
Yes,
whatever else.
it was the loudest I've ever heard when Notre Dame had the football. The absolute loudest. So they had to overcome a lot. Even walking around town in the hotel, it might have been 5-1 is what it felt like. And then obviously you get to the venue, and it was probably 2-1, I would say. But it was incredibly loud. It was an open air press box. So we're basically sitting in the stands. It was so loud when Notre Dame had the football, and they overcame all that. I mean, they overcame everything. Nobody thought that they were going to win. You know what I mean? And so they overcame all of it. Just the crowd. Obviously, as the game wore on, Notre Dame fans got a little bit louder and Georgia fans got a little bit, quieter and that sort of thing. But it was a definite underdog on the road atmosphere throughout until the very end when the trophy presentation was taking place. That's the only time, because then obviously
all that red was filtering out of the Superdome, and the 20% that was left in green and blue and gold and whatever else, I assume. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, mostly green. But yeah, it was.
And there's Brian Kelly over there in the corner.
I wish. That would have been great. I'd have walked right up to him, shook his hand, said, "Thanks, buddy. Thanks for laying the foundation."
Well, I mean, obviously, I didn't get a chance to be in the building to like experience all that stuff firsthand. So what stood out to me just watching the game on TV, I think the most, I mean, it's not like we weren't predicting it, because we were, but just the physicality that Notre Dame played with against a team that is kind of, like Georgia and Alabama over the last, decade plus have sort of become the standard bearers, for what you think of when you think of speed and athleticism and physicality at the line of scrimmage and, all those different things. And we felt like Notre Dame matched up with this kind of team better than, any of those Brian Kelly teams that had been in the playoffs or in the BCS championship game. And like from the get-go, Georgia has the ball first, and Notre Dame's defensive line was just pushing Georgia's offensive line around that first series, especially. Now, as you would expect, Georgia responded. They won some battles. Notre Dame won some battles the rest of the way, and like Georgia won some downfield shots, but Notre Dame was able to, Notre Dame was obviously able to make explosive plays of their own. Jaden Harrison and, Riley Leonard with some of his runs and things like that. The running backs never really got off the ground, but Riley Leonard was able to make up for that with some of his own play. So that was just what stood out to me, was from a pure physical standpoint, Notre Dame was every bit the match of one of what's been one of the best programs in the nation over the last 6 or 7 years.
Walking on the field before the game started, during warm-ups and all that, and I was walking over by the Tims, O'Malley and Priester, and we were watching Georgia kind of warm up. And what really stood out from a Georgia perspective, from their offensive line, was I was expecting in person just like girth. You know what I mean? Just big, like just girth. You know what I mean? Width. What they did not have that, by the way, the offensive line, in my opinion, in person. What they did have, though, was height and length. They were just like long arms, height. They were just very long.
When Notre Dame hosted Georgia in 2017, I remember like being down on the field after the game, and teams singing their alma maters and all that kind of stuff. There was an offensive lineman who I was kind of in one corner of the field. He starts running it like towards me, and this was one of the biggest humans that I've ever seen. Like fitting the description of what you're talking about. Just huge, not just completely girth massive, but like that, like that long and tall with, obviously some physical, muscular stature to go along with it. That's something that it seems like they have always had under Kirby Smart anyway.
And I think what I took from that in pregame was that they're not as wide, so Notre Dame's speed defensively could get around it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or they were going to use their length and keep Notre Dame at bay. Like those are the two options. You know what I mean? And I think Notre Dame did a good job of using their speed against Georgia's length, as opposed to it wasn't just a big wall that they couldn't get around. You know what I mean? They were a little bit skinnier, but they were taller and longer. The hand fighting, the hand play went to Notre Dame in this one.
Definitely seemed like it with some of the plays that Notre Dame was obviously able to make in the backfield. And we'll touch on at least one of those here, a couple of those. So you asked Xavier Watts after the game about the message that it sends to the team, having a coach who's willing to go for it on fourth down, deep in their own territory. And of course, that being 4th and 1 when the punt team is on and then it's off, and here comes the offense. You're at your own 18-yard line. Here is Xavier Watts' response to that.
Yeah, I mean, just having a coach and a coaching staff that, like you said, that aggressive mindset kind of just gives us the confidence that, all right, these guys are all in. We need to be all in on the play call too. So, when they go out there and like we need to go on 4th down and they want to be aggressive, you need to go all in, make sure you do a job and get it done. So, I mean, it's just so refreshing to have coaches like that.
So, Vince, fabulous question, by the way. Marcus Freeman is blank.
Marcus Freeman is the coach that Notre Dame needs. I mean, that's a bottom line, right? I mean, he is who this team needs. He is who we as fans need. As media members, it's what we need. I mean, he is who they need, and he is coaching like his maturation process from getting the job until now is impressive. I mean, he has gained so much confidence as a head coach, and he has so much confidence in his players. It's so obvious. It
just feels like I was thinking about this last night, like watching the press conference, looking at some of the gutsy calls that, like that was like, you talk about stones of steel, man, like we were handed out No-Nads awards to Pat Narduzzi and Kurt Signetti last week. I mean, this is like the Nads of Steel award, on that play, that specific play last night. But we've seen other calls like that. And Marcus Freeman, you talk about his maturation. He's gone from a coach that a lot of people, after Northern Illinois, week 2, wanted to run out of town. He's in over his head. He can't do it. This shows that. And like, as we've talked about over the course of this, he didn't hide from that. He didn't shy away from Northern Illinois. He only let it make him stronger and make his team stronger. And he's just gone, like, in the span of 3 months from that to a coach who did, still kind of show signs of maybe he's not completely sure of himself, to like, this is an elite college football coach right now. This is a full-born elite college football coach is what we've seen. And like,
yeah,
that play just exemplifies that, the guts to do that and to, have his team prepared to do that. It wasn't just a whim on a spur of a moment kind of thing.
I believe it was Kirby Smart in the post game. He was asked about Marcus Freeman or something along those lines. He compared him to Dan Campbell of the Lions, and going for it on 4th down and all those.
We've talked about that on Rapid Fire before. Like, he's become the Dan Campbell of college football, I think.
Which, who would have guessed that in the first year or two that he was there? Not me. No. Like, he was always like, hey, let's just play good defense. Let's not take any chances. That was kind of his MO, and it was super frustrating. But that's who he was. And now he's just completely flipped the script.
He wasn't quoting Metallica and, cocking his hat all over the place like Dan Campbell. But, we still love Dan Campbell for, for those things too. But like, remember, Dan Campbell was also, he was a first-time head coach when he took that job in Detroit. So there were questions that he had to answer. And it didn't start off great for Dan Campbell. But, the tone that it sent, I think, by going the Detroit, Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions are the team in the NFL that goes for it the most on 4th down and converts the most on 4th down. And that's what Marcus Freeman is as well. And the special teams and the fakes, Dan Campbell does that stuff as well. Like, they use that stuff as a weapon. And I do think that, like, when you talk about your culture, the culture obviously starts with Freeman and his personality and trickles down through the staff that he's got, because they're a big part of that culture as well. But I think that just the message that it sends to your team, we are confident in you and we've prepared for this. We've prepared for this moment. The moment is not too big for us. It starts with the head coach, and it was just on full display last night in the biggest moments. Agreed. So RJ Oben made one of the biggest plays of the night with a strip sack that Junior Tuihalamaka recovered, allowing Riley Leonard to hit Beaux Collins on the touchdown pass on the next play just before halftime. Here is Leonard on Oben, who, of course, came to Notre Dame from Duke, just like Riley Leonard this past offseason.
People don't understand how good of a person he is and how smart he is and how much of a hard worker he is, because he's a mellow guy. He's not going to say much. But if you're ever in the facility, like 5 hours post practice, he's going to be somewhere doing something to get better. I mean, the consistency amongst this guy is insane, and I've been seeing it for 4 years now in my college career, and I'm grateful that he was able to, come with me to this place. But this is a very mature guy we're talking about, and somebody who's not going to say a word whether things are going good or bad. He's going to put his head down and work, and that's kind of the MO of our season. I heard a quote last week, Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't do something, you're right. And RJ believed in himself all season, and it's finally starting to pay off for him.
Starts with confidence, and that's a big thing. And I think a lot of young people sometimes don't, fully grasp that it starts, not just with your physical traits, but what's between the ears as well. That was Oben's first sack of the season, Vince, which was amazing when I went back and I was, writing some stuff up and putting some stuff together on that. Does that make up for, essentially the fact that it has been a bit of a quiet season for RJ in his 60th season of college football?
Yep.
All right, next question.
He saved it for the biggest moment, right? We talked about Beaux Collins, and I said this is what he was brought in for. He's going to make a play in this game, and it may be one play, and that's fine. He's going to make a play. Well, he caught the only touchdown, scored on by the offense, right? That's right. So he made his play. That's what he needed to do. That whole sequence, field goal by Mitch Jeter, transfer. Strip sack by Oben, transfer. Touchdown,
Riley Leonard,
pass and catch, transfer. Like, and then kickoff return touchdown, transfer. Those guys, every one of them paid off in that moment, in that 54 seconds of playing time or whatever it was. That 17-point swing in that game was huge. And they were all transfers, primarily. Obviously, it takes 11, but they were all primarily transfers that did that. I mean, if that's not vindication for the guys that you brought in, I don't know what is.
And, you talk about roster building, and as Marcus Freeman has said, they're not going to major in the transfer portal, but, they're going to use it essentially like free agency. You go out and you fill key spots. I mean, Jordan Clark has been a big part of this team all season, on the defense, especially as thin as that secondary has gotten at times, when you lose a guy like Benjamin Morrison, obviously, and you had Jaden Mickey transfer, not even in the middle of the season, before even the season was halfway through. But absolutely for me with RJ Oben, because like you were brought here to help this team win a national championship, because every year that's the goal at Notre Dame. And making that play got them one step closer to that goal last night. And, again, like with all the ups and downs and the injuries that have happened on that defensive line, he might not have played, quite to the elite level that maybe, people thought that he was going to play out coming in. But, again, when the stakes were the biggest, he went out there and he made the biggest play of his career. So awesome.
Yep. Could not agree more.
How close are you? Like, do you need to get going? Are you good for another question or two, or what do you think?
I think they call group 2. We're group 8.
Okay. Oh,
like
wow.
boarding. So we're okay.
I might slip some more questions in here before it's all said and done.
It's very crowded flight, I can tell you that.
All right. Is that a baby stroller that's sitting next to you, by the way, or what is that? Okay. All right.
It's, luggage with bags on top.
Gotcha. Okay, so here's how Riley Leonard said he was able to refocus after having the game postponed for a day after the Bourbon Street tragedy.
Obviously, the events that occurred were very challenging, and I just want everybody to know that the Notre Dame family, every single person in our locker room, is praying for those families that are out there. I also want to thank the New Orleans Police Department for responding the way they did and creating a safe environment for us to play today so quickly after the events. But as a player and as a Notre Dame player, you recruit the right people for a reason. And I think adding another day is just helping our superpower out. We say our superpowers all the time. Our preparation and the character in our locker room, those are two intangible things that we have that we utilize. So to have an extra day, after we got done praying for all the families, I hit up my quarterback coach and said, all right, can we watch some film tonight? Like, I watched a whole, I got 4 or 5 more hours of film study. We had another day of walkthrough. That's our superpower, is our preparation, and I think it definitely paid off today.
Preparation is the superpower. That was really interesting to hear him say that. And I'm curious, like, Vince, when you're sitting there in that press conference room and you're hearing Riley Leonard talking about superpowers, like, what are you thinking when he's saying all this?
I'm always fascinated by what Coach Freeman comes up with. Choose hard and your superpower and the gold standard, like all of these different things. I don't know if he's just an avid reader, like where he comes up with it, if he's just like, these kids are obviously buying into whatever he's selling. And it doesn't matter how corny it is. It doesn't matter any of that. If they're buying into it, that's what matters.
Right.
And they're completely bought into what he's doing. And whether you call it a superpower or whether you call it an advantage or whatever, doesn't matter. It's an advantage, and they buy into that it's an advantage.
Right.
Right. And when he was talking earlier, Marcus Freeman made a quote about, they asked him about, did playing last week, was that an advantage or whatever? He's like, whatever they throw at us, that's our advantage. Like, we're a glasses half full team. Everything's our advantage. That's the way we look at it. And they're bought in, and it shows.
And it's not just window dressing. He's not just like throwing quotes and clips and, all that stuff out there. They're obviously living it every day. And like hearing the quarterback, who obviously is such a huge part of this, to be voted a captain by his team, by his peers, and his only year on the team, to hear him talking about that preparation is superpower and all these different things that Riley Leonard's, you're absolutely right. They're obviously completely bought in. And Jesse and I earlier in the show, we played the clip with the little back and forth where Riley Leonard is like, he's just being modest, and he's like calling him out.
The best. That was the best. I've watched that. I saw it live, obviously, but I've watched that clip numerous times, and I laughed out loud when he started saying that. So I don't know if you can even hear that distinctive laugh, but like I thought that was hilarious.
I think I did. There was definitely some chuckling you could hear in the room.
But but it's genuine. Like he's kind of the all shucks, corny, whatever. Like I get it, but like it's genuine, and I think every player on that team, whether they think he's corny or not, they also buy into Riley Leonard and that he's genuine and that he has all of their best interests at heart.
Well, that's the thing. Like Riley Leonard is part of the superpower too. Like the aura, the presence that Riley Leonard has that we keep talking about. That's like, forget about the stats. Stats are for losers. Follow the guy who's going to lead you to the end zone. Follow the guy who's going to lead you to the win. That's what it's all about.
Like he had under 100 yards passing. Okay, and that's what everybody is going to hold on to for the next 7 days before the next game or however many days it is.
They keep wanting they keep wanting to bring that up like every step of the way. They keep winning.
Right.
And after every win, they keep saying, well, he's going to have to pass better if they're going to beat this team.
Like, Drew Aller has the advantage because he could throw the ball all over the yard.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Keep thinking that. That's awesome.
And he could do that. And he could do that against Boise State,
Right.
And like no slide on Boise State. But the path, the team that Notre Dame just played is much better than Boise State. And that's like Penn State has not looked more explosive all season than they looked against Boise State.
Correct.
Like that's where they ran into trouble against Ohio State, was they lacked explosive-ness. It's going to look a lot different when they play this Notre Dame defense.
That's exactly correct. And Kirby Smart said it. He's like, this is one of the best defenses we played all season. He's like, it's different when you're playing a defense like this.
That's right. And fill in the blank. Donovan Heinisch finishing off the game by sacking Gunnar Stockton is blank.
It was the perfect ending to a perfect night is what it was. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching the game, Sean, and I'm starting to get like, during that series, I'm getting giddy. Like I'm starting to get giddy. It's under 2 minutes. They got it's a 2-possession game. Like I'm starting to not be able to focus real well. I thought it was third down.
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine what it was like to be sitting next to you in the press box. Were you still in the press box? Could you guys go down on the field? Okay.
I waited because I didn't want to miss anything. I waited until the game was over. But like I apologized to the guy sitting next to me after the game was over. I'm like, thanks for putting up with me during the game. But like, I thought that was third down. I didn't even realize it was fourth down, to be perfectly honest with you. And then they're all coming off the field. I was like, it's over. This is great. Like, it was a perfect ending. It was an absolute perfect ending to that game.
No, you're exactly right. And I thought it was fitting because, all the questions about the defensive line going into this game and, Riley Mills obviously being out, that was significant. It was very significant. But then Howard Cross also gets hurt in the fourth quarter and he has to go out. So Donovan Heinisch is out there because Howard Cross had to leave the game. So it's Heinisch and Gabe Rubio there at the end, because so to me it was just fitting that Heinisch was able to make that play with, again, with all these question marks, all these injuries that this defensive line has sustained over the course of the season. It was to me just amazing, again, against this one of the programs, as we've talked about, that's just churned out these great physical specimens on the offensive line, and it's Donovan Heinisch, one of the more undersized guys you're going to find, who goes out there and makes the sack to seal it off, and then they take a couple knees and that's it. So I thought it was pretty fitting that Heinisch was able to do that.
Just a wild way to finish that game. And being at the game, I do want to say this, being at the game, Howard Cross never went to the tent. He just went back to the huddle with his helmet on. So I'm hoping, for good things there. And then Jeremiah Love was on the elliptical bike towards the end of the game as well. So hoping that's a good sign. I don't know. Obviously, we're not going to know probably till we meet with Marcus Freeman tomorrow. But I was
going to say, well, we should find out something tomorrow.
I just wanted to put that out there as like an observer of what I saw.
Sure.
I feel fairly good. But then again, I felt good about Mills watching him in the IU game too. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions.
I mean, we obviously don't know. And like the press conferences are interesting because it seemed, like they bring out the head coach and the two players, and typically, like after a Notre Dame home game, for example, we're going to get probably a good 15 minutes with Marcus Freeman exclusively. And then we get players after that for, like 5 minutes or so a piece. When you're doing everybody in 20 minutes, you're going to get a lot fewer questions asked.
Well,
and obviously people didn't get to ask that kind of thing.
And they also had an open locker room at the same time.
True.
And they also had kind of an auxiliary press conference. So they had like a bunch of players in the auxiliary press conference, and then they had an open locker room, and then they had the head coach. So it's 3 different areas going on at the exact same time. So I was one person, so I went to the head coach's conference, obviously.
It's
but
tough.
like it was, some of the other play, there was people all over the place. So it was kind of wild in that regard. But they weren't going to tell us anything about injuries anyway.
So I talked to Brian Driscoll, our boss, of course, today. Now, I don't want to put carts before horses, but if Notre Dame beats Penn State, gets to the national championship game, Brian, of course, is going to go down, I think, a little bit. He's going to the Orange Bowl this week, but he's also going to go to the national championship game, budgets and all that stuff. I've got a Notre Dame women's basketball game Sunday the 19th, but the national championship game is Monday the 20th. And, of course, that'll be a primetime kickoff. What are your thoughts about, it's not a short drive, but
is this the RV game?
Not necessarily RV, but two amigos cruising down the road for about 10 hours to get to Atlanta. Brian is in on, getting his credentials if we're willing to get in the car and drive.
They haven't won since I was 7 years old. So yeah, duh.
All right. We're in, because then I don't have another basketball game until Thursday.
Perfect.
So like Monday, then it's going to be a lot of driving. But
you know what?
I mean, when the Royals went to the World Series, I drove like 9.5 hours to get to Kansas City. Went to the game that night. Had a few adult beverages, while I was at the game with my buddy. But then got up the next morning and drove home all day.
Wow.
So I mean, that's essentially what this would probably end up being. So
wow, yeah, it's a good call. Well, we'll figure it out. I'm not worried.
Maybe we stop somewhere along the way, find us a good Wi-Fi connection, do a show on the way back or something.
See, look at you.
If we had the RV, that would make it perfect, but we don't have that RV.
Start calling around. and we start calling around.
So I mean, anyone out there in the area who wants to, loan us an RV, we'll give you plenty of live reads.
And you could be the driver. Like whoever loans us the RV could be the driver.
There you go.
And I guarantee you, we could come up with a ticket in the stands.
They might be. I was going to say they might be mad if we left them in the parking lot.
Well, I think we could get them a ticket. I think we could probably work on that. Don't you think?
I think you're probably right. I think you're right.
Just saying.
All right.
Something we need to work on. So, all right. I think it's about time.
All right. Well, it's just time. Thanks for doing this. I know that you're obviously at the airport and you're getting ready. So. Safe travels going through Charlotte and then back to the Bend, right?
Back to the Bend tonight.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Safe travels, you and your wife. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
See you later, buddy.
All right. He's Vince for him, for Jesse. I'm Sean Stiers. Notre Dame on to the semifinals of the college football playoff. Vince and I will be back Monday to jump in more Notre Dame Penn State coming up next Thursday. Talk to you then. Aviation Sports Talk.